Something is on fire. You did not start it. Nobody alive has ever seen anything like what you are looking at right now. Lightning hit a tree on the hill above your camp, and now the tree is doing something that has no name. It is producing light and heat and a sound like breathing. And it is eating everything it touches and turning it into smoke and ash and something beautiful and terrible that you cannot look away from. Every instinct in your body is screaming, run, but your feet will not move because something else is happening, something deeper than instinct, something that does not have a name yet either, wonder. So what actually happened when ancient humans first discovered fire? What did they do with it? How did they learn to control it? What did they think it was? And how did that single frozen moment, one terrified human being standing in front of a burning tree, change absolutely everything about what it means to be alive on this planet? Buckle up, because this is not just a story about fire. This is the story of how we became human. Let's start with the timeline, because the relationship between humans and fire is much older and much stranger than most people know.
The earliest evidence of fire used by human ancestors dates back approximately 1.5 million years. Not Homo sapiens, not modern humans, our ancestors. Homo erectus, 1.5 million years ago. Modern humans have only existed for 300,000 years. Agriculture started 12,000 years ago. Writing started 5,000 years ago. Fire use predates all of it by an enormous margin. The site of Wonderwork Cave in South Africa contains evidence of fire use dating back 1 million years. Burned bones, burned plant material, ash deposits in layers suggesting repeated and sustained fire use. Not accidents. Deliberate use? Humans returning to fire, maintaining it, building a relationship with it over time. But here's the question most people never think to ask. Where did the first fire come from? Ancient humans did not invent fire. Fire existed long before humans did. Lightning strikes, volcanic activity, spontaneous combustion. Fire happened constantly in the natural world. What humans did was something far more extraordinary than inventing it. They decided not to run. Think about what that means. Every animal on Earth has the same response to fire: run. The instinct is absolute and ancient and shared by everything that breathes. And at some point, one of our ancestors broke that instinct completely. They stayed, they watched, and then they reached out and picked it up.
That moment required overriding the deepest survival instinct every living creature shares. By sheer curiosity. That is the moment everything changed. Now let's talk about what fire actually did to early humans, because the changes were not just practical, they were biological. The cooking hypothesis, developed by primatologist Richard Wrangham, argues that the discovery of cooking with fire was the single most important event in human evolution. More important than tool use, more important than language. Here is why.
Raw food takes enormous energy to digest. Chimpanzees spend approximately 6 hours per day just chewing. 6 hours every single day, just chewing. Because raw food is tough and the digestive system works enormously hard to extract nutrition from it. Cooking changes everything. Cooked food is softer. Nutrients are more available. Digestion is easier and faster. Cooking essentially pre-digests food before it enters the body. The result was ancient humans who cooked suddenly had access to significantly more energy than those who did not. More energy meant bigger brains. The human brain consumes approximately 20% of the body's total energy. Growing and maintaining a brain this large would have been metabolically impossible on raw food alone. Cooking made big brains possible, which means fire did not just warm ancient humans, it made them intelligent. And the fossil record confirms this. Human skulls from before widespread fire use show smaller brain cases and larger jaw muscles for chewing tough, raw food. Human skulls from after widespread fire use show dramatically larger brain cases and smaller jaws. The skull changed because the diet changed. The diet changed because fire changed it. Fire did not just change what ancient humans did. It changed what ancient humans were. Now let's talk about what that first night around a fire actually looked like, because this is where the story becomes extraordinary. Night in the prehistoric world was not like night today. It was genuinely, completely, absolutely dark. No electric lights, no city glow, nothing. When the sun went down, the world went dark, and the predators that hunted in darkness came out. Before fire, ancient humans had no answer to that. They hid. They huddled. Every night was a survival challenge in ways modern humans literally cannot imagine. And then fire changed all of that. In a single night, the first group of humans to spend a night gathered around a controlled fire experienced something no human before them had ever experienced. Safety in the darkness, light that kept predators away, warmth that made cold nights survivable, a visible gathering point that kept the group together, a focal point around which people could sit and see each other's faces in the darkness for the first time. That last part is more important than it sounds. Before fire, after dark, you could not see the faces of the people next to you. You could not read expressions. You could not hold eye contact. You could not watch someone tell a story with their face as well as their voice. Fire gave humans the evening, and in the evening, gathered around the fire, something began that would define our species more than almost anything else. People started talking. Not functional daytime communication. Where is the prey? Danger is coming. Follow me. The evening around the fire created space for something entirely different. Stories, memories, imagination, the sharing of ideas about things not immediately present, things that had never happened and might never happen. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the Juhoinzi people of the Kalahari and found that daytime conversations were almost entirely practical and economic. Evening conversations around the fire were dominated by stories, jokes, spiritual discussions, and social bonding. The campfire did not just keep humans warm, it created the conditions for human culture to exist. The campfire is where humanity happened. And it started with someone not running away from a burning tree. Now, let's talk about what ancient humans thought fire actually was. Because the spiritual responses to fire are some of the most fascinating things we know about ancient people. Ancient humans, lacking any scientific framework for understanding combustion, believed something that was not entirely wrong. Fire was alive. This was not a metaphor. Fire breathed. Fire ate. Fire grew and shrank. Fire died if you did not feed it. Fire had moods. Fire responded to how you treated it. This made fire something between a living creature and a god. In Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest religions, fire was the central sacred element. Sacred fires were maintained continuously for thousands of years by dedicated priests whose entire role was keeping the flame alive. In ancient Rome, the sacred fire of Vesta was maintained by the Vestal virgins. If the fire died, it was considered a catastrophic omen for Rome itself. The priestess responsible could be severely punished. Gastriarch, in ancient Greek mythology, fire was so sacred that the gods did not want humans to have it. Prometheus gave fire to humanity and was punished by Zeus with eternal torture, chained to a rock while an eagle ate his liver every day. His liver regenerating each night,
so the punishment could continue forever.
That was the price the gods placed on human access to fire. Every major ancient culture had a fire deity: Agni in Hinduism, Kagutsuchi in ancient Japan, Sutsuchutli in Aztec tradition. Across every civilization on Earth, humans looked at fire and saw something sacred. Fire was not technology to ancient humans. Fire was divine. And the person who controlled the fire controlled access to the divine. Now, let's talk about the terrifying gap that most people never think about. For potentially hundreds of thousands of years, humans used fire but could not make it. Let that sit for a moment. They could maintain fire. They could carry fire. They could feed it and move it and protect it. But when the fire went out, they could not start it again from nothing. They had to find it in nature. When humans moved camp, they carried their fire with them, keeping embers alive in bundles of bark or clay containers designed to preserve a coal on a journey. If your fire died and there was no natural fire source nearby, you were in serious trouble. This created a completely different relationship with fire than the one we have now. Fire was not something you made when you needed it. Fire was something you had in weeks carved to treat it, and treated with the reverence due, something irreplaceable, because it was irreplaceable. Losing the fire could mean losing everything. No wonder ancient humans treated it as divine. Like a living being, fire could die and leave you in complete darkness. The development of fire-making technology, the ability to create fire from nothing, was one of the most significant technological leaps in human history. Evidence suggests reliable fire-making emerged somewhere between 400,000 and 700,000 years ago. Two basic methods existed. Friction methods involved rubbing dry wood against dry wood to generate enough heat to ignite tinder. The bow drill, where a bowstring wrapped around a spindle is moved rapidly back and forth, is one of the oldest and most effective techniques. It requires dry materials, the right combination of woods, good tinder, and significant skill. It looks easy when an expert does it. It is not easy. Percussion methods involved striking flint against iron pyrite to generate sparks that could ignite tinder. Faster when it works. Requires exactly the right materials. Both methods required knowledge that had to be taught and learned. They were genuine skills passed between generations. And the moment a human being first succeeded in making fire from nothing, that was the day the gods got nervous. Now, here's the part that will genuinely move you. When the first human ancestor sat in front of a fire and felt the warmth on their face for the first time, they felt something that every human being who has ever lived has also felt: the specific comfort of firelight. Researchers have studied why humans respond so powerfully to firelight specifically, why it calms us, why it lowers blood pressure, why it creates social openness in conversation, why we are drawn to it in a way that goes beyond rational explanation. The answer is that our response to firelight is not learned. It is ancient. It is written into us below conscious experience. We love firelight because for hundreds of thousands of years, firelight meant safety, warmth, community, the sound of familiar voices in the darkness, the faces of the people we loved, visible and real in the glow. Every time you feel that particular peace that comes from sitting in front of a fire, that is not a preference. That is a memory. Hundreds of thousands of years of human experience compressed into a feeling that lives in your nervous system before it reaches your conscious mind. Your brain recognizes firelight the way it recognizes the faces of people you love. Because for most of human history, the two things were always together. And here is the wild part. The campfire is dying in the modern world.
Most people in developed countries go entire years without sitting in front of a real fire.
The evening around the fire that shaped human social behavior for hundreds of thousands of years has been replaced by screens, each person in their own light, each person in their own story. We gained almost everything from that trade. Almost. But something ancient and deep in the human nervous system notices the difference. Every person who has ever gathered with people they love around a fire and felt the conversation open up in ways it does not open up anywhere else. Every person who has felt the particular ease of Firelight company, they're feeling what humans have felt every single evening for hundreds of thousands of years. That is not nostalgia. That is inheritance. So, what did ancient humans do when they first discovered fire? They froze when every instinct said run. They reached out when everything in the world said stop. They carried an ember for miles and generations because they understood that what they were carrying was irreplaceable. They built their nights around it. They told their stories by it. They kept their children warm with it. They cooked their food on it and grew larger brains because of it. They prayed to it and feared it and gave it names and built temples to keep it burning forever. And the first person who did not run from the burning tree, the one who stood still in the dark and watched the light and felt the warmth and felt the first faint human version of wonder, they changed everything. They had no idea. They were probably terrified, but they stayed. And honestly, every good thing about us started there, in the warmth, in the light, in the decision to stay instead of run. That decision is so old, it is in your bones. It is in your brain. It is in the specific peace you feel when you sit in front of a fire and the conversation gets easier and the darkness feels manageable and the people around you feel close. That is not just a nice evening. That is the oldest human experience there is. If this lit something up in you, share it with someone you would want to sit around a fire with. You know exactly who that is. Subscribe for more stories about the humans who came before us. And comment below, which part burned brightest for you? I will start. The fact that our love of Firelight is not a preference. It is a memory. 400,000 years old, living in our nervous system. Still sitting with that one. Still sitting with that one.